Elias Ward had always thought his life would be ordinary. A human engineer serving in the outer colonies, he was used to fixing machines, recalibrating engines, and surviving hostile environments that most people never dared to enter. But nothing in his experience had prepared him for marrying into an alien noble family, nor did he expect to find himself in a situation where one wrong move could awaken a living fortress, or earn him a shout that would echo across the halls for years. "You're in the wrong hole." That's my sister S. The noble house of Sarilith, the alien woman who had become his wife, was unlike anything Elias had ever seen. Towering ceilings shimmered with a strange bioluminescence, walls pulsed with soft rhythms, and corridors seemed to move subtly, almost alive. The aliens themselves were graceful, regal, and frighteningly fast. Sarilith, despite her noble demeanor, had a warmth that made Elias feel slightly less like a foreign object in this alien world. But even her warmth could not prepare him for the chaos that was about to unfold. It started when the alarms of the living fortress blared across the central hall. Red and violet pulses raced along the walls, lighting up patterns that Elias could not decipher. Sarilith's voice rang in his ears. "Elias, the core is unstable. You have to enter the interface chamber now." Interface chambers were specialized bioneural docks. They allowed selected individuals to connect directly with the fortress's central system. The process was delicate, usually reserved for the royal bloodline. But Sarilith had insisted that humans, with their adaptability and problem-solving skills, could stabilize the fortress in a crisis. Elias swallowed hard. I can do this," he asked, trying to mask the quiver in his voice. "You must," she replied. "The Empire is depending on you. Enter the chamber immediately." Elias nodded, though his heart raced. The corridors were confusing, twisting, and alive. He had been guided by attendants who spoke in rapid alien clicks, far too fast for him to comprehend fully. In his panic, he mistook one chamber for another. The doors glowed invitingly, and he stepped inside without hesitation. Immediately, he realized his mistake. The chamber did not hum with the fortress's core energy. Instead, it had a softer, more delicate rhythm. Strange tendrils of light reached out to him as if expecting a noble's touch. He froze. "Elias!" Sarilith's voice screamed through the comms. "No, that's my sister's chamber." The words barely registered before a wave of bioenergy surged through the interface. Alarms shrieked, the walls shook, and the lights flared violently. Elias stumbled, instinctively trying to withdraw, but the interface had already latched onto him. He felt his mind entangle with the alien biosystem, sensing the faint heartbeat of Sarilith's sister, unconscious inside the chamber. "Relax," he shouted, though he doubted his own words. He tried to steady himself, focusing on what he knew best, analyzing patterns, finding weak points, and applying logic. The fortress reacted. It shivered and pulsed, recognizing a human in a role no human had ever filled. For centuries, only the royal bloodline could interface fully with its neural system. But now, here was Elias, a human, improvising in ways the fortress could not have anticipated. Outside, Sarilith's attendants panicked. They had never seen a human enter a royal interface chamber before. Their gestures became frantic and their voices screeched in alien clicks, but Sarilith, despite her anger, remained focused. "Guide him," she shouted. "Tell him how to stabilize the chamber." Through the chaos, Elias followed instinct. He observed the glowing pathways, aligning them with the fortress's feedback. Every pulse, every flicker of light seemed to respond to his logic. Slowly, he began to stabilize the energy flow, redirecting it away from dangerous surges. Minutes or perhaps hours passed. Time became meaningless inside the chamber. The interface was sensitive, delicate, and alive. And yet, Elias, a mere human, was beginning to understand it in ways the aliens had never anticipated. Finally, the surges calmed. The alarms quieted and the walls returned to their steady, pulsating rhythm. Elias exhaled, staggering out of the chamber, sweat glistening on his brow. Sarilith rushed to his side, her expression a mix of fury, relief, and awe. "You could have destroyed her," she yelled, pointing to her sister's chamber. "Do you realize what you almost did?" Elias bowed his head. I didn't mean to," he admitted. "I thought I was entering the core chamber." Sarilith's eyes softened slightly, though her voice was still sharp. "Humans, always improvising. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't." Her sister, now awake and blinking in confusion, approached. She studied Elias carefully, her alien eyes narrowing. "You survived?" she asked, voice trembling. "You were not supposed to survive that interface without royal blood." "I guess humans are different," Elias said with a small shrug. "We learn fast." Her sister let out a sharp laugh, part amusement, part disbelief. "Perhaps the galaxy is about to learn just how different humans can be." It was true. Over the next few hours, Elia's unintentional connection had stabilized a portion of the fortress that had been failing for decades. The living walls, which had been silent and slow, now responded faster, adapting in ways even the nobles had never seen. The human mind, with its ability to improvise and think unconventionally, had awakened a potential hidden for centuries. Sarilith watched him closely. Despite the shouting, the panic, and the near catastrophe, a part of her could not help but admire his courage. He was human. Fragile in some ways, yes, but in others, extraordinary. That evening, after the alarms had subsided and the fortress had returned to its normal rhythm, Sarilith took Elias aside. The corridors were quiet now, glowing softly with the fortress's steady pulse. "You have no idea what you've done," she said, her tone more serious now. "This is not just a mistake you made, it's a revelation. Humans may be more important to our empire than we ever realized." Elias rubbed the back of his neck. "I just followed my instincts," he admitted. "I didn't know this would happen." Sarilith smiled faintly, a rare gesture for a noble of her rank. "Sometimes instincts are enough. Sometimes they are all we need to survive." Outside, the stars glittered over the alien city, a reminder that the galaxy was vast and unpredictable. In the days to come, the Empire would witness something it had never expected. A human, standing shoulder to shoulder with the nobility, stabilizing ancient systems, and proving that adaptability and courage could change the course of history. Elias did not yet understand the full weight of his actions. He only knew one thing. In a world of rules, rituals, and ancient traditions, a human could make a difference. And sometimes, one wrong step could lead to extraordinary consequences. The next morning he would be summoned to the council. He would face questions, scrutiny, and perhaps disbelief. But in that moment, walking through the glowing halls beside Sarilith, he felt a new confidence. Humans had a place in this galaxy, not just as visitors or mercenaries, but as vital contributors to the future of civilizations far older and wiser than themselves. And perhaps, just perhaps, being in the wrong chamber had been exactly where he needed to be. The morning after the incident in the chamber, Elias felt a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. He had survived the unthinkable, and yet the reality of his situation was sinking in. The living fortress he had accidentally interfaced with was now partially awakened to human input. It was responding faster, moving in ways the aliens had never imagined. And he, a simple human engineer, had been the catalyst. Sarilith walked beside him as they navigated the twisting corridors. Her expression was calm but tense, the calmness of someone who had spent a lifetime controlling chaos, and the tension of someone who knew the world was now watching them. "The council will want to speak with you," she said quietly. "They will have questions and doubts." Elias nodded. He had expected scrutiny, but he was beginning to realize that this situation was far more complicated than he had imagined. As they reached the council chamber, Elias' mind raced. The hall was immense, with walls that shimmered like liquid metal. The council members, a mix of elder nobles and high-ranking military officers, sat in seats carved directly into the living structure itself. Their eyes fixed on him as he entered, curious and cautious. Sarilith stood at his side, her hand lightly brushing his arm, a subtle gesture of reassurance. One of the elder nobles, a tall figure with silver-hued skin and eyes that seemed to pierce into the mind, spoke first. "Human," he said, his voice resonant and commanding. "Explain yourself. How did you interface with the chamber without royal blood? This is forbidden." Elias swallowed, recalling the chaos of the previous day. I entered the chamber by mistake," he said. "I thought it was the core interface, but when I realized it was not, I adapted. I followed the system's patterns and I stabilized it." The chamber reacted to him. The noble's expressions shifted from skepticism to something else: surprise, disbelief, curiosity. Sarilith stepped forward. "He did more than stabilize it," she said firmly. "He unlocked responses that have never been seen in centuries. The fortress, it reacted to his logic and human adaptability. It may have saved this house and perhaps more." A murmur ran through the council. One of the generals leaned forward. "You claim a human stabilized a royal interface. That is impossible. The system requires bloodline synchronization for any meaningful input." Elias met the noble's gaze. "I don't know why it worked," he admitted. "All I know is humans are good at improvising. We see problems differently, and sometimes that's enough." The silence that followed was heavy, as if everyone in the room were trying to process what he had said. Finally, the eldest noble spoke again. "Perhaps the human is correct." His voice was slow, measured. "The fortress has been in decline. Perhaps bloodline alone is not enough. Perhaps innovation is needed." Sarilith's sister, now standing behind them, nodded slowly. "The human's approach is not the same as ours," she said. "He does not follow tradition. He does not fear mistakes in the same way. And yet, he succeeded where we would have failed." Elias could feel their attention on him, a mix of scrutiny and respect. It was strange to be noticed in this way, especially among beings whose entire lives were steeped in centuries of tradition. After long discussions and deliberation, the council reached a decision. Elias would remain in the house as a technical advisor to the fortress. He would work alongside the nobles, learning their systems and teaching them the human approach to problem-solving. It was an unprecedented role, one that carried both honor and danger. Sarilith squeezed his arm gently. "You've done more than survive," she said softly. "You've begun something new." Elias' days quickly became a whirlwind of training and adaptation. He learned to navigate the living fortress, understanding its moods, its rhythms, its subtle responses to input. Unlike machines he had worked with before, the fortress was alive, and it required empathy as well as logic. He spent hours walking through corridors that shifted like rivers, calibrating interfaces that pulsed with bioenergy, and improvising solutions that surprised even the most seasoned nobles. His human perspective allowed him to notice things that the aliens had overlooked for centuries: small inefficiencies, hidden flaws, and patterns that, if corrected, would enhance the fortress's performance exponentially. One day, while calibrating a secondary interface chamber, Elias noticed a subtle flaw in the energy distribution. A section of the fortress that had been unstable for decades could collapse under stress if left uncorrected. He quickly devised a solution, rerouting energy flow and adjusting neural feedback. The fortress responded immediately, stabilizing the section and preventing potential disaster. Sarilith and her sister observed silently, impressed by his intuitive grasp of the system. "Humans think differently," her sister said quietly, "and sometimes differently is better." Elias smiled, realizing that he was no longer just a guest or a mistake. He was becoming essential. As days turned into weeks, the alliance between human and fortress deepened. The fortress itself seemed to recognize Elias as a unique influence. Corridors and rooms that had been sluggish now moved swiftly, responding to his commands with an almost playful energy. Sensors and defensive systems, once slow to adapt, now anticipated potential threats before they arrived. It was as if the fortress had learned from him, embracing human ingenuity as a complement to centuries of alien tradition. But not all was calm. The Outer Empire had taken notice of the unusual events. Word spread quickly. A human had stabilized a noble fortress, using methods no alien had ever employed. Envoys arrived, some curious, others skeptical, all questioning the propriety of allowing a human such access. Elias found himself facing intense scrutiny from officials who were unsure whether he was a savior or a danger. Yet, through every interrogation and debate, Saralith remained by his side, defending his actions and advocating for the value of human adaptability. Her support gave him strength, and gradually others began to see the potential benefits. One night, as the fortress hummed softly around them, Elias walked with Saralith along a corridor that shimmered with soft, golden light. The air was filled with the faint hum of bioenergy, a soothing rhythm that seemed almost alive. "Do you ever think about the future?" she asked. "About what humans like you can do for the Empire?" Elias paused, looking at the living walls that pulsed in response to his presence. "I think humans are capable of more than anyone realizes," he said. "Sometimes it takes a mistake or an accident to show what's possible." Saralith nodded, a thoughtful expression on her face. "Yes, and sometimes it takes courage to step into the unknown." The weeks continued with training, problem-solving, and adaptation. The fortress grew stronger, more responsive, and more efficient under Elias' influence. Minor crises that once took days to manage were resolved in hours. The nobles began to appreciate the human touch, seeing that logic combined with improvisation could enhance their ancient systems. Even her sister, once skeptical, now treated Elias with respect, acknowledging that his contributions had saved her and their house. Then came the real test. A neighboring sector of the empire experienced a sudden energy fluctuation, an event that threatened multiple noble houses. The council called for Elias to assist remotely, guiding stabilization efforts from within the fortress. Using a combination of human intuition and alien technology, he directed energy flows, adjusted neural patterns, and prevented a catastrophe that could have destabilized the region. His ability to think outside the traditional methods astonished even the most senior nobles, and the fortress itself responded with remarkable speed and precision. The success brought recognition. The council, once wary, began to view humans not just as outsiders but as essential partners. Elias' role shifted from accidental participant to formal advisor, a bridge between species and systems. Saralith's family, initially rigid in their traditions, began to understand the value of human innovation, embracing the idea that collaboration could strengthen even the oldest institutions. Despite the accolades and responsibilities, Elias remained humble. He knew that humans were not perfect, but he also understood that their perspective, unencumbered by centuries of rigid tradition, could unlock potential where others saw only limits. And in the quiet moments, when the fortress pulsed gently around him and Saralith walked silently by his side, he realized that perhaps this strange, glowing world had become a home. The living fortress, once a symbol of ancient rigidity, now thrived as a testament to human adaptability. And though the empire remained vast and complex, filled with challenges and dangers, Elias felt ready. Humans could make a difference, and sometimes it only took one human's courage to awaken possibilities that had been hidden for centuries. And so, with the stars shining above and the living walls of the fortress responding to his presence, Elias prepared for the next challenge. The galaxy was vast, the empire intricate, and the path uncertain. But one thing was clear. Humans had a place in this story, and perhaps, just perhaps, They were more important than anyone had imagined.